Hello there and welcome to a new video for Age of Wonders 4. In this one I got 10 tips and tricks for you for the Feudal Culture, which will help you to understand how these guys work, how to play them, how to build your own faction around them. It's all about the innate things that are native to these guys. So let's get started with number 1. As usual, I want to talk about the exclusive traits here. So number 1 is about stand together. Stand together is something that all your units have, and it is a buddy system which unlocks 20% more damage when there's another friendly unit adjacent. Just want to lose a couple of words to that. The skill is amazing. It's your unlocker for whole formation fight things, but one unit is enough. You don't get extra bonuses for extra dudes right next to you. It'll only make you vulnerable against AoE attacks. And it also means that ideally you position your people and then you attack. So it takes a bit to get used to it. It's a bit more finicky than other cultures, but once you got the hang of it, it becomes your second nature. It's just really important that you just take into your combat plans that you ideally only attack when there's a buddy next to you, and you avoid to attack solo. And avoid overly exposing yourself to AoE, because that's an innate weakness. Anywho, that's a good summary of that skill. Let's get on over to number 2. That's the Feudal Lord system. So every one of your heroes can be a certain lord. This is a level up skill, and you have one lord for war and one lord for every type of income. This is pretty amazing because this way you can either buff up a city or you can buff up your army. I love to take this as the first lord, by the way, because it really does so much for expanding your reach of the early game. These guys can be assigned to go as a governor to a city, and to make things even more spicy, you can even build a lord's manor and double the income from your governor. So, in a nutshell, these lords let you react to whatever you need. Want to expand like crazy? Go for the Lord of Crops. Need an army? Go for the Lord that increases draft. So, you lack magic? Go for a mana. So this is amazing because it lets you spec into whatever you need to dominate the current situation, and that is a level of flexibility in the early game that not many cultures can compete with. Use it wisely because it can really do a lot for you, and also means that you want to have at least 5 cities because, you know, all the lords, no? So number 3, let's talk about your racial bonuses in terms of the roster, and let's start with the prices, okay? So, cheap units, number 3. You have amazingly cheap pikemen. These guys are cheaper than any tier 1 unit in the game. And this is really cool because you can spam the hell out of them. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the pikemen in a hot minute, but I want to go on over to the scouts because they have another nice little thing. They are low maintenance. I mean, this is technically not that much of a bonus, but it means that every fourth or every fifth scout is basically free. This allows you to swarm the map with scouts without pressuring your wallet too much, which is pretty good because you need your wallet for the armies, because these guys are really good at churning out huge armies relatively quickly. It helps a lot to have a cheap scout unit in that regard. And these guys, well, they are, as far as I've seen it, the cheapest tier 1 unit in the game. Now, but I want to go over to number 4. Quickly, let's talk about the supporters first, because before we go to the peasant pikemen on number 5. So the bannerman is an amazing unit. I found it one of the most powerful supporters that I've played around with. And that's mostly because their power-up skills, they are again an adjacent thing. That means put them into the middle of a ball of units and you get that bonus on everybody. And they also can generate a lot of healing and moral. Moral is basically crit chance, and it also helps against it helps in mitigating units that lower your moral. There's a lot of stuff that lowers your moral in this game. It's cool to have that. Basically, these guys are here buffing your resistances amazingly, and to add something on top of that, they can even shred armor. Really, I love these guys. They should be the heart of your whole formation thing. And I personally think the moment you unlock the Bannermen, you are basically able to tackle most of the things on the map because your buffing potential is amazing. These guys make your army resilient as hell while being able to debuff the enemy. So you go first with Smite to shred the resistances, and then even your relatively low power units will have a cool impact. So it allows you to go against tanky guys. All right, I guess you already see the bigger picture here. Let's get on over to number 5. I want to talk about those peasant pikemen with all their goodness. First off, you know, they are a damn cheap Polearm unit. That means you get 40% extra damage against large targets. These guys are amazing to swarm down large monsters, like in Wonders or on the map or whatever. It is a really cool innate trait to know about, and they also counter cavalry, but that's only the start. First off, they got this feudal training thing, so they gain 20% more experience. And to add some icing on the cake, the moment they go here into the champion rank, they transform into a defender unit, which is your basic tier 2 shield unit. That means you don't have to pay for your shield units at all if you played properly. Basically, you get your defenders for free, and then you just rehire your pikemen. So this is a amazing synergy because you just need to refill your ranks with these guys, and you get your shield units for free. These shield units are a little bit underwhelming in a nutshell, but that doesn't matter at that point. It is just you just get a part of your tier 2 roster basically for free, in combination of having a low-cost tier 1 unit that even counters monsters and cavalry. I personally deem these guys as the hidden superstars in the feudal roster because they're cheap, they deal damage, and they evolve, and there's really nothing not to like about them. They receive buffs as well. That's another thing to note about them. So really, really good stuff. Makes you pull out a lot of early game pressure. Which brings me to number 6, which is exactly that. These guys are really amazing in putting down early game pressure because you can swarm the battlefield with a really, really resolute army. Because, you know, once you have bannermen, pikemen, archers, and defenders together, can turtle up and beat down a lot of things. That's really amazing. And with a couple of extra spells in the tactical roster, be it buffing up their damage with spells or bringing up some tactical spells to nuke the enemy or immobilize them, they synergize extremely well because the roster of yours is basically a very, very solid blank frame that doesn't do much except for shaving some resistances and countering later some pikemen, but it goes so well with buffing. So early aggression with the feudals is amazing. It's fun because you get a really, really good army that's not too squishy. Downside, damage is a little bit low, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So number 7, I want to talk about another nice little hidden trait. They come with a natural high moral. You not only have the Bannerman's Soothing Standard, which gives you moral, there is also the Knight, which comes with the Inspiring Killer trait, which is more moral when they kill an enemy. And you also come with a native spell for the battlefield. I don't know, can I see? Yeah. Call to Glory is a feudal spell. You have that access to that natively, which also gives you the ability to buff your moral in a 1 hex radius. It's not that much, but it's adding up, you know. In a nutshell, your units will have a high ability to crit, and they will be extremely resolute against any moral breaking tactics because you basically will have a hard time winning just with that. Good, that's one thing, but number 8 is just the next thing. You have one issue with this faction: your military force will fall off once things get past the tier 3 range. I feel like other factions have a much stronger presence in the mid to late game with their basic roster. These guys with their tier 3 unit, as cool as it is to have access to a shock unit, this rounds up their roster massively well. It doesn't add up much to their late game capabilities on their own. Basically, the feudals really need some leg to stand on later because they are really good at early game impression and expansion, but there is not much banging up that backing up that bang after you have conquered the basics, and it's really easy to topple you over at that point if you have extremely buffed up units, mythological stuff, and you get the idea. So number 9 is another thing that I want to point out here. This roster is one of the most balanced rosters that I've so far analyzed in the game. You have a little bit of everything. You have every damage type. You have physical, ranged, and melee. You have physical range and melee, exactly. You have magical range, no magical melee. That might be one thing, but it's not that super important. You have defenders, you have something to counter cavalry, you have your own shock units. There's something in it for everything. The only thing that the only lacking department is, like I said, magic damage. So you can pretty much counter them quite well with a high physical armor. But then again, there is the Bannerman. So there is basically something in the pocket for every job, and I like that. But it also comes with a price, like I said in the point before. This jack of all trades and master of nothing thing is a problem that will be later an issue. Which brings me to number 10. You are really awesome at expanding with all the stuff that I got, but you ain't got no research naturally at all. All the buildings that you can get for this faction are not going into research at all. The clergy commons bring mana, which is really cool because that gives you the ability to spam out even more spells. The Tithe Shrine does the same. And then you got the Lord's Mana, which is again food and gold. So nothing with research. You can resolve this issue with many ways. You have the Lord of Knowledge. You can just spam out a lot of cities and build libraries and the stuff everywhere to counter that. But your native strength, it lies in expansion and conquering, not in research. You're really worst off in the research department. Not catastrophically, because like I said, I think expansion has a really good way with countering that on their own, but you can resolve that problem by falling back to access to your native affinities here. You have natively access to order and nature, which allows you to vassalize people really well or build cities like crazy. Vassals share their income with you, so there's a nice way of getting that done. You can also just conquer other free cities and utilize another culture that's better with that, because, you know, you can just integrate a culture like the High culture into your empire, no problem. You can just transform one of your cities into a massive hub of research. There's plenty of options to resolve that issue, but you should be aware of that, because otherwise you will fall back in the arms race with spells, and it's really important that you have strong spells, strong summons, and all these things as soon as possible. It's something you need to invest time on. So that's the last point on my list. There's so much more to say about these guys. I must say, I had so many things on my list that I had to move for the next one, because as you all might already know, I'm working on an advanced tutorial for all these, or advanced tips and tricks for each one of those factions, so it's all in a work in progress. But I think this video, or I hope that this video, has helped you to get a grasp of these guys, because they are basically civilized barbarians. Did I say barbarians? That's the next one on the list. I'm going to go for the barbarian civilization 2, and then, well, I love to hear back from you what we're going to do next. So leave a thumbs up on that video if you enjoyed. Consider subscribing. I'd be delighted if you did. And check out the description box. There is a playlist link to all the other Age of Wonders 4 tutorials and tips lists that I did if you want to have more of that stuff. Big thanks goes out to the supporters of the channel. You guys are truly amazing, and I appreciate all the stuff you did, as I do appreciate you guys watching these videos. I really do a lot. And check out the links down there. Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee are a ways and means to support this channel. I'd be delighted if you did, and if not, thank you so much for watching this ad. I really appreciate. So, have a wonderful day, and see you guys next time.